Is everyone ready? I appreciate everyone being here tonight. I know it is an unusual hour. I want to provide the media and the public as much information as we have it right now. I know that typically in an event that involves the police, the chief would be available to answer questions and provide updates. He is unavailable because quite literally, at least as of the last time I talked to him, he is out on the streets working shoulder to shoulder with his officers and just simply can't pull himself away from his work right now. But I have gotten updates from him, statistics that I'm sure you're interested in pertaining to what's going on, number of arrests, injuries, and things of that nature. So the chief certainly would be here if he could, but he's quite literally out on the front lines helping keep our citizens safe. So I know time is important. I'm going to go as quickly as I can and get to these statistics, answer any questions you may have. Just want to maybe begin with a sort of a brief overview, perhaps of what, in my opinion, is happening in our country and in our community. I issued a statement about an hour ago that contains these thoughts, but I think they bear repeating. There are people in our country and in our city who are hurting. They are in pain. They are angry and scared because they believe that a number of the institutions that govern American life, judicial system, the economic system, the government structures, are tilted against them in an unjust and unfair way. And these feelings have built over years. They certainly did not begin with the terrible events in Minneapolis on Monday. Frankly, our country has been struggling with issues of race for as long as we have been a country. Their hurt is real. They are our brothers and sisters, and we should care when they are as hurt as so many of them are. And I think tonight, this anger and frustration is playing itself out, not just in Toledo, but literally in cities all across the country. I support them, and I support not only their right to protest, I support what they're protesting about. That is why I joined them today at both of the scheduled protests that took place. The one that started around noon over in the Westgate area, and the one that took place this afternoon over at the Safety Building. Took part in both of them, and I felt it was important for me to do so. Not just to show my support to the cause, but frankly, to listen. I think it is important for people in my position to listen. And frankly, I think it is important for people of my race right now to be listening. I am a 47-year-old white man, and I process the world based on the experiences that I've had. And I understand that the life experiences I have had are different than a great many other people in our community and country. And we will never solve this problem as a country if we don't talk to one another and listen to one another. And that's why we brought together a group of African American leaders yesterday, frankly, including the organizers of the two marches. And that's why we're committed to continuing to work at what we can do to be better. I support the protest and the right to protest. But I do not support violence. I don't support violent protest. And I don't support the things that have happened in the hours since the first two protests ended. The first two protests, I was there, and I saw, if not you personally, your news organizations. I had a chance to talk to all of you. It was positive and constructive, orderly and peaceful. But as we have seen in so many other cities, and I've been in probably hourly contact with my colleagues around the state, the mayors of the other large cities, the pattern's been exactly the same. After sort of the officially scheduled protests that took place during the daylight hours, as day gives way to night, more problems have arisen. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. We can get into it. I think to some extent, leaders, important faith leaders and civil rights leaders who are recognized and respected in the community perhaps went home, after that second rally, thinking that the rallies were over, and those who remained, maybe didn't have the opportunity to have the benefit of their counsel. I think there could have been actions, potentially, and we'll talk about this, of our officers that potentially may or may not have heightened tensions. And we're going to talk about that and review it. There is some indication that there are folks not from our community who have been uniquely involved in some of the more violent activities that have taken place in the after hours. I think there's a combination of things going on, but the fact of the matter is things have turned a little more violent here in the last couple hours. There are those who believe that only violence can bring about the change they seek. I disagree. I think Martin Luther King and Gandhi would disagree. Gandhi freed his people from years of British colonial rule without one bullet being fired. I think if your ideas are powerful, words alone will be enough to bring the change you need. So I don't support the violence that we've seen. I don't support violence when it is directed by a citizen toward a police officer, and I don't support violence when it is directed toward a police officer toward a citizen. For those reasons, I decided to impose a curfew on some portions of downtown beginning at 9 o'clock, and it will lift at 6 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. And we will reassess where we are then and attempt to move forward. That's why we made that decision. We felt that there was a concentration in and around the central business district, especially the courthouse safety building, that was dangerous, and I felt that was a step we needed to take. Logistically, I can say that every police officer on the force has been called into duty this evening. They have all reported. The entire force is on the job. We have asked for and received assistance from suburban communities and other law enforcement partners as part of reciprocity agreements we have, specifically the Maumee City Police Department, Maumee SWAT, and 20 state troopers have joined our efforts to protect the citizens of Toledo. There has been some damage to businesses in our community, most of it here in the central core of the city. Specifically, windows have been broken out at the Ohio Building, Roth Furs, the PNC Bank, Fifth Third Bank, Huntington Bank, Dietz Barbecue, the Police Union Hall has had windows broken out. That's a little bit outside of the curfew area, but it is nearby. And now there is some indication that in portions of West Toledo, over in Alexis and Lewis, The Target over there has seen some vandalism. We have made 10 arrests thus far, and there have been there have been 3 confirmed injuries, and I want to clarify here right at the beginning what that means. I am aware of social media posts that concern me, of individuals who attended the protest who are showing bruises and cuts that they apparently, and I take them at their word, may have gotten from the rubber bullets or pellets that the police shot. They would not be counted in these injury statistics. The 3 injuries that I'm talking about were those, though not serious, were serious enough to merit medical attention, and that's how we're counting them as of now. 2 protesters were injured. 1 police officer was injured. All appear to have been injured by projectiles thrown by protesters. So the 2 protesters who were injured appear to have been injured by things thrown by other protesters. One was an M80, and the other was some sort of a projectile. I do not know what kind. And the officer who was injured enough to receive at least basic first aid was injured with a rock that had been thrown. That is all of the data I have at this moment. I am certain that as the night goes on, we are likely to see more arrests. I hope we do not see more injuries or worse. I am not naive about what is going on in our country. I know that we are not perfect, but we have thus far avoided the worst examples of disorder that we have seen in major American cities, including many here in Ohio. We've avoided that for the most part, and we hope to continue. But this is a situation that changes every hour, every 20 minutes, and there will be developments through the night. What is happening now, we sense, is that there are groups, kind of sort of splinter groups that might be popping up in various neighborhoods throughout town, and our police and our police partners are going to make sure that the citizens of our community are safe. The final thing I will say is that I am aware of and troubled by the reports of force being used by Toledo police officers. I am troubled by any use of force at any time. I'm troubled when citizens use force against one another, against property, against police. I'm troubled when police use force. I'm aware of the reports of force being used. I do not have enough information right now to cast a judgment on what happened, why it happened, when it happened. I'm aware of some of the discussion on social media. I take it very seriously. Remember, I was at these protests. I did see some of it. The first tear gas incident, I did see the beginnings of that. It could be that our officers may have engaged in force too quickly or improperly. It could have been that protesters engaged in behavior that was improper. Or it could be that we are in a country that has brought us to the very moment we are in right now, where there is such a disconnect between our police department and many of those they serve that there may never be clarity about some of these triggering events this afternoon, because police and many of the people they serve see the world so fundamentally differently. And that is the issue that faces us as a country, and it's an issue that we will take seriously and work as hard as we can to address. We're not going to know tonight many of the things you're going to want answers to. We're going to get through tonight. We're going to wake up tomorrow, and we're going to review everything that happened tonight and everything that may happen going forward, and we will follow the truth wherever it leads us. And we will not be afraid to make tough decisions when we do. My first goal right now is to protect the safety of the citizens. That is why, like the mayors of Dayton and Cleveland and Columbus and Cincinnati, I imposed curfew for portions of our town. And that's the approach we're going to take. So we're going to talk to the chief and the team about every event tonight and what happened when and why. I am troubled whenever force is used. I would still say this, though. If given what is happening in many cities around the country, and we see the images on TV, if we can get out of what we're experiencing with some, perhaps questionable and certainly unfortunate uses of force that allow us to avoid some of the truly awful and horrifying things we are seeing in other cities, I will count my blessings and say that we have done our job and will accept all of the criticism people want to give me for how our officers performed. We will evaluate it in the light of day. We won't make decisions emotionally. We'll follow the facts. That's what I have as of now. I know you're all on a tight deadline since this is live. I don't know if you have questions or want to take them. If so, I will take them now. If not, we can wrap up, and I'm sure we'll have more updates tomorrow. We're going to keep working through this to keep our citizens safe.
On the injuries, was the officer taken to the hospital?
I do not believe he or she was taken to the hospital. I do not know if it was a man or woman. I don't know if they were taken to the hospital. I know that he or she received some sort of medical care, which is why I'm counting them. And I'm not counting the Facebook photos of bruises and stuff, which are also injuries, but not part of what I'm counting.
And the two protesters were injured. Did they go to the hospital?
I do not believe so, but I'm not sure.
Overall, the protest was peaceful initially, and then some outsiders, it seems, came in and started throwing bottles at the police department.
Yeah, it was certainly peaceful to begin. I can vouch for that. I was there. And actually there was, I'll be really honest, I don't want to say there was positivity in the air, because there wasn't, of course. This is what's happening. I mean, if you're not outraged by that video, then you'll never be outraged by anything. So it was serious stuff. But there was almost sort of a refreshing commitment to the best of what democracy can be. Citizens upset, citizens exercising their First Amendment rights, citizens peaceably assembling, redressing their petitioning their government for redress of grievances. I mean, truly, 3 of the freedoms in the First Amendment. And so there was a spirit of hope that we could bring some change. And I'll tell you, and I'll say this, and look, I don't, you're going to get from me what I am, and I'm going to say, and I don't know if this offends people. I hope it doesn't. I thought it was a positive thing. I was struck, especially at the first rally, but even the second, how many non-African Americans were there, or to put it another way, how many white people were there? How many people who looked like me? That first rally, my guess was 90%, and I know it shouldn't matter. I know. But it does matter. Everyone knows what's happening in this country. And so to see such an overwhelming percentage of non-minority protesters, it gave me a hopeful sense that, maybe we're not as divided as a country as some people would think we are. And it made me think that there is a critical mass gathering around the need to make change. But that did all disappear, to your point, later in the afternoon. Now, why it did, I have my opinions, but I don't want to rush into judgment. I will say this: the pattern that happened in Toledo is almost exactly what has happened in the other Ohio cities. I know that for certain because I know those mayors and I've talked to them all day. I can't precisely vouch for what's happening in other American cities, but darn it, if it didn't unfold exactly that way in Dayton and Akron, positive, respectful, orderly, peaceful rallies in the afternoon, followed by something a little darker in the evening. Now, we have seen some indication that there are folks from out of town. I just talked to the mayor of Dayton, who's a close friend of mine. I think they have arrested maybe 15 people, I think she said, and almost half of them weren't from Dayton, and that began to give her a sense that, but I don't say that to say that there aren't people in Toledo who are upset. There are. Is there something else going on here? Is it part of I don't know, could there be an element of outside organizing? I don't know. well, there will be a time to analyze that. But I think that could have been part of it. I think, frankly, as I said earlier, the departure of many pastors and civil rights leaders, probably to their homes thinking the rally was over, probably didn't have a positive effect. At the second rally, I stood with the president and vice president of the NAACP for part of the time, Ray Wood and Michael Alexander, talking about actually how peaceful it was and positive. But I'm sure Ray and Michael went home, thinking it was over. And I think a lot of people did. And the folks who remained, I don't know what their motives were, but they did not have the opportunity to have guidance from, NAACP leadership, maybe their pastor. There were several members of city council there, including African American members of council. I saw at least 3 of them, but I think they went home. And maybe they did, I'm not sure, but I think that could be a factor also, and that's what we've seen in other cities. So, look, tonight, I want to give facts, and I could speculate and guess, and I do have some theories, but we don't know for sure. We're going to review it soberly and intelligently. We're not going to react emotionally. Something did change. Is it a coincidence that the chronology was so similar to what we're seeing in other cities? I don't know. I think, in events like this, there's probably never the black and white certainty that we sometimes want. There's always an awful lot of gray area and ambiguity. And I've read a lot of the posts from folks who are convinced that our police overreacted, and maybe they did. And we're going to get to the bottom. I'm telling you, we're not going to be afraid about what we find or how we pursue it. But maybe, my sense is there might be a couple sides to the story, and we're going to review that. Ultimately, the buck stops with me, and I'm accountable to whatever happened and will happen. But I will again say, as unfortunate as it was, and I'm sure it was unpleasant. Look, I actually have been pepper sprayed actually in my life. I don't know if that's. I was young and kind of a rabble rouser. So I know what it's like. It's not fun, and I have no doubt people were upset when that happened to them. But if we can get out of this with that being the worst that has happened to someone, I will defend that day. So
now everything's kind of clearing out of downtown. It seems like
yes.
the mall, the Target. What can you tell us about maybe like the status of downtown? Is everyone kind of cleared out now?
I believe that downtown has relatively cleared out. All of you probably noticed coming down here tonight, the police have I think done a decent job of moving protesters out and blocking roads. So that is my sense of the situation in downtown. What we don't know is where protesters may be going, what their motives may be. There's some indication that there might be a hot spot over, again, at Alexis and Lewis. I talked about the damage to the Target there. The parking lot of the Home Depot might be a site where folks are gathering. Swain Field is a site where folks could gather. Franklin Park Mall is a site we're worried about also. We're keeping an eye on all of that, and we're going to keep the citizens of our city safe.
Mayor, when you say police action may have exacerbated some of these things, can you talk specifically what you're talking about?
No, I mean, I don't. There has been some sense on social media that an otherwise peaceful protest was sullied by officers who, for no reason, started, shooting tear gas. That is a common. There are many people on Facebook who are making that claim, and I've talked to folks who are friends of mine who I trust, who are concerned by what they saw, and there may be another side of the story. There may not be. I don't know. I really don't know. But we're going to dig down and get to it. I know that I saw. Now it seems like there were at least 2 incidents that involved tear gas. The one at Cherry and Spielbush, I actually saw the beginning of that. And what I saw was officers actually blocking Cherry Street, allowing protesters to move up, I guess it would be would it be northwest on Cherry Street. And at that moment, protesters, some seemed to encircle the officers in a potentially dangerous way. And I know that was one of the moments where tear gas was used. But there seems to have been another incident, perhaps on Bancroft, I believe, that is troubling to people. And I didn't see that one. I didn't see. And but again, I don't want to speculate. I know tear gas was used, and I'm not happy about that. But I'm also not happy that, you know, rocks and bottles were thrown at officers, and a squad car was vandalized. You know, at least one squad car was vandalized, and windows were broken out at the Union Hall. I'm not happy whenever there's violence. But as often happens in cases like this, I think there's probably some truth to both perspectives, and we're going to pursue it wherever it takes us.
There was some social media chatter of the National Guard being brought in. Can you dispel that?
That is not, that's not on our radar screen right now. It's not something that I believe is needed right now. It's not something that we've requested. The National Guard has been brought in to Columbus, Ohio, and Cleveland, Ohio, but that is not something that's happening in Toledo at this moment, and not something we requested. So the answer to that is just no.
Been some reports on the scanner of looting. To the best of your knowledge, has that occurred?
Well, I know there've been broken windows. I don't know if looting has been associated with that. I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me, but I don't know. I know as officers began enforcing the curfew and moving citizens out of the core of Toledo, many of them were just sort of breaking windows as they went. I don't know that there would have been looting there, especially 3 of them were bank locations. But could there have been some looting at the Target? I don't know.
Thanks, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'm sure we'll have another update, tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thanks.